have a special guest today that I want to introduce. Jeff Parrett has been one of Hylo's most devoted champions and ambassadors over the years. And he is a retired engineer who is putting all his ideas into action. He is the founder of the Rising Foundation and the Hozho Collective and focused a lot on social change over the decade. Two of the communities he stored in on Hylo are the next economy based on contributionism, which he'll tell us all about, and many more. Jeff, welcome. We're so happy you're here.
Thanks, Yasmin, and everybody. Oh, hey, let's see. Am I unmuted here?
Yes,
There
you
we
are.
go. Thank you so much. And I'm just so impressed. Sean, I actually wrote down the first time I was involved with Hylo, which is 2016. I didn't think there was anybody out there. And I was one of the original venture capitalists that started Hylo and was on the board. And really, like, how do we create a social impact platform that's not about extraction? And I just want to give props to the Terran Collective, what you guys have done and how you are carrying this. And we're at a really powerful inflection point in the world. And how do we find each other? Diane or Diana, I use Hylo to run my board of directors. In fact, we have our board meeting tonight. So great thing to do. Emmanuel, be that champion, right? Start your own organization, start a group, get people involved, and over we see it's that champion that like holds the group and facilitates it that really makes it take off. And I love we're starting to see things. I've been following Nate and the great simplification from the beginning, and there's this convergence that's happening, right? All these things burst out there. And now there's a convergence happening. We're finding each other wherever we're at in the world. And so I always like to think about, I want to give you three reasons why you should use Hylo. Right. And if we've got the three reasons, then it's just about taking it out in the world. And the first one is it's all about connection. Right. And I call the four quadrants of connection that have to do with time and place. Same time, same place. We're here, same time, but different places. Right. And so there's these four quadrants. And what Hilo gives you is the capacity to execute things in each of the quadrants. Right. So if we're at different times in different places, how do we find each other? Well, we've talked about Slack, we've talked about email, we've talked about chat, WhatsApp. We've just had this explosion of platforms. And it's like, where is that message? How do I find that? And I'm sure we've all had this, like, how do I find it? Right. Well, have a single point of entry, right? Create a group. I just started a new group yesterday. I probably have a dozen groups that I work with within the Hylo ecosystem. And there's some high level groups. The Rising Foundation group is there, and that's where I run my board. The Hozho Collective is a bioregional movement that I'm working on towards new economies. And so there's a group there. And within that, we have a lot of subgroups for the projects that we're working on. But I think the one that's the central focus of my world right now is something called contributionism. What if we shift from a capital-based economy to a needs-based economy? And what would that look like? And how would we design that? And so using Hylo as this platform to connect with each other in these different quadrants, right? So that's the first reason. The second one is something that I saw over and over in as an engineer is people reinventing the wheel. It's like, why are we wasting human effort? So, Sean, to your point, I talk to the Hilo team. It's like stay in your lane, right? Be that place where people can come together and connect. And where there's another tool, find the partner, right? So within my groups, I have a punch out to my Zoom group for my board of directors. So now when someone texts me and says, "What's our Zoom link?" I said, "Go to Hilo." Right? So we're not answering these same questions over and over again. So we have a lot of conversations around how do we stay in this lane and really do what we do most effectively and find the partners that we can partner with. So I have a punch out to Google Drive, right? It's a great platform and maybe there's better ones out there, but wherever you're storing content, have it and access to that. So I love that feature about Hilo. But here's the third one, and I think the most important one. It becomes a system of record, right? Now you have a history of what your group has been doing in one spot. Now you bring somebody new on board. Hey, go back and look at the previous conversations, right? Every time I have a new board member come onto my foundation, I have to bring them up to speed. Well, now I've got things that I can point them at, right? And I can, they can go back and I don't have to explain all the reasoning, all the logic of why we did or didn't do something because it's there in the platform. And so I think those three reasons really give a foundation of what Hylo can be. And yesterday, or I mentioned yesterday, I started a new group. So I'm working on a book project. And we were using email, we were using chat, we were using Google Drive, and stuff was getting scattered all over. And there's just two of us, right? And so now let's bring it into a group. And now, as we're working on various aspects of the book, we start a discussion, and we can keep in touch and communication and focused on that particular element. And so, I if you can't tell, I'm a zealot for Hilo and what it can be. But I think what it really takes is what Manuel was kind of asking about is to be that champion, right? To stand in it and be willing to. We've got such platform fatigue, right? There's more and more stuff happening out there, and there's a bit of resistance that I think we have to overcome to get people engaged. But once they see the real value of it, then it's so much easier to collaborate and work together. And so I'm going to share the working title of the book we're working on. It's called Emergence to Convergence: Chaos, Imagination, and Creation. Like there is a convergence that's happening now, right? There's been this burst of innovation of ideas and people doing things that are all about social impact in the world. And now we're finding each other, right? Now we're converging into a single, entity. And I loved what you guys said, Claire, about the super groups, if you will, where people can come together and have a climate change commons where we can work and collaborate together. So you can find me. I'm on Hylo. You can see my profile. There's links to the work that I'm doing, and send me a chat if you want to connect.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm curious, like, what is next for you with all these different groups on Hylo? Like, what's exciting and what's next? You
You
always have
know,
something amazing going on, so tell us.
so this is the crazy thing is the big question that's in my mind is how do we get more IRL in real life kind of activity going on? And I started looking at like what groups have really done an effective job of that. And I'm listening to a book on power versus force, and there was this chapter on organizations, and what came up was Alcoholics Anonymous, how they've created these super active groups. And they said in the US, probably over 50% of the population have somehow been influenced by alcoholics or some kind of AA type group. And I said, Capitalists Anonymous? And so really looking at how do we create these self-organized, self-empowered groups that people can start on their own and start building their own projects. So that's what's going on for me right now.
Amazing. And someone's asking for the name of the book if you want to respond to them in the chat. Thank you so
Which
much. Oh, the book that
um,
you mentioned.
so if you go to my profile, I have a book list that is actually in there. It's in a Google Drive, and you can click right on it and see all the books that I've read. But the one that I'm reading right now is called Power versus Force, where force tries to implement something, whereas power allows, standing in your power.